Hello everyone, and welcome back. Have you ever noticed how some stories feel so familiar, so widely repeated, that we stop questioning them altogether? Today, we are diving into one of the most iconic examples of that phenomenon, a story we all grew up hearing, but almost never paused to examine. So, welcome back, everyone. Settle in, relax, and let us take a calm step into the sands of ancient history together. For nearly 2 centuries, the dominant explanation behind the Great Pyramid of Giza has stayed the same. A single ruler, Pharaoh Khufu, commanded the construction of this massive monument roughly 4,500 years ago. According to textbooks and traditional accounts, tens of thousands of workers spent about 20 years shaping limestone, hauling granite, and stacking over 2 million blocks, all with simple tools like wooden sledges, copper chisels, and rope systems. It is a story that highlights determination, coordination, and human ambition. And honestly, it is a powerful narrative. But here's where things get interesting. When we step back from the repetition and look closer at how this explanation was formed, we find that much of it is built on assumptions, interpretations, and educated guesses rather than firm, detailed records. The truth is, very little direct evidence links Khufu to the Great Pyramid in a clear, documented way. Most of what we believe today is the result of later interpretations, pieced together from various clues. That does not mean the story is wrong. It simply means it is more uncertain than most people realize. And when a monument this massive, this precise, and this influential in human history rests on a foundation of assumptions, it invites us to take a deeper, more thoughtful look, not with suspicion or sensationalism, but with curiosity, with openness, with the willingness to say, maybe there is more to this than we have been told. Today, we will start exactly there. We will explore why the traditional story became so dominant, how it has shaped our understanding of ancient Egypt, and what happens when we examine that familiar narrative with fresh eyes. If the Great Pyramid truly required only simple tools and a few decades of labor, that alone is astonishing. But if the full story is more complex, more layered, more mysterious, then understanding it may change the way we think about one of humanity's greatest achievements. So take a breath, get comfortable, and let us begin our journey into a story everyone knows, or thinks they do. As we move deeper into this story, we come to one of the most surprising details, something that seems almost impossible given how iconic and important the Great Pyramid is. For a monument of this size, significance, and architectural brilliance, you would expect ancient Egyptian records to proudly declare its builder. After all, this was a civilization famous for documenting nearly everything: victories, celebrations, offerings, daily routines, and especially grand construction projects commissioned by their rulers. Yet when we step inside the Great Pyramid itself, the inscriptions just are not there. There are no elaborate carvings praising Khufu, no long, hieroglyphic passages describing the king's vision, his commands, or the workforce that supposedly brought this marvel to life. No detailed artistic scenes like the ones found in many other royal monuments. Instead, the interior feels unusually bare, almost intentionally quiet. Scholars sometimes point to a few faint markings found in upper chambers, discovered long after the pyramid was first entered in modern times. These markings include a reference to Khufu, and they are often cited as proof of his involvement. But here's the part many viewers do not realize. These marks were found in areas that had been sealed for thousands of years and only opened in the 19th century, during a time when early explorers sometimes enhanced or misinterpreted discoveries. Because of that, some researchers question whether these markings are genuine construction notes or something added later, whether accidentally or intentionally. To be clear, this does not prove Khufu had nothing to do with the pyramid, but it does make the story less solid than the textbooks suggest. In a civilization so meticulous about keeping records, why is their greatest monument the one that lacks a clear, contemporary signature? Some historians suggest the answer could be simple. Maybe the pyramid's creators never intended it to be a personal monument at all. Maybe it served a different purpose. Something ceremonial, astronomical, or symbolic, and Khufu later associated himself with it. Others believe the original records may have existed but were lost over time. Whatever the truth may be, one point stands out. The connection between Khufu and the Great Pyramid is not as straightforward as we have always been told. And that uncertainty opens the door to new questions we will keep exploring as we move forward. Now that we have talked about the unusual lack of inscriptions, let us turn to something even more puzzling. The Great Pyramid does not match what we expect from a pharaoh's tomb at all. And this is not just a small detail, it is one of the biggest contradictions in the entire traditional narrative. Across Egypt, royal tombs follow a predictable pattern. They are filled with symbolic artwork, carved prayers, protective spells, treasures meant to accompany the king into the next life, and identifications of the ruler buried there. From the painted walls of the Valley of the Kings to the elaborate burial goods found with Tutankhamun, pharaohs made sure their tombs reflected their status, power, and spiritual journey. But step inside the Great Pyramid, and none of that appears. The walls are undecorated limestone. No scenes of gods guiding the pharaoh. No lists of offerings. No protective texts. No ornate sarcophagus, covered in gold or inscriptions. Even the granite box inside the king's chamber, often called a sarcophagus, is completely bare, with no markings to identify who it belonged to. And here's the most striking part. No confirmed remains of Khufu have ever been found inside. Not even fragments. If the Great Pyramid was truly intended as his eternal resting place, this absence raises obvious questions. Where are the funerary items? Where is the carved record of his journey? Where is the king himself? Some argue that grave robbers must have taken everything long ago. But that explanation does not fully add up. Even in looted tombs, archaeologists typically find traces, broken artifacts, damaged inscriptions, leftover pieces of burial goods. But the Great Pyramid is empty, as if it had never been a functioning tomb in the first place. This has led researchers to wonder whether the Great Pyramid had a different original purpose and only later became associated with Khufu. Maybe it was ceremonial. Maybe scientific or astronomical. Maybe symbolic rather than funerary. Whatever the answer, it is clear the structure does not resemble other royal tombs. Not in design, not in contents, not in function. And when one of the world's greatest monuments does not behave like the thing it is supposed to be, it forces us to ask a simple question. Were we told the wrong story from the beginning? If the lack of tomb features inside the Great Pyramid raises eyebrows, the next piece of the puzzle raises them even higher. Because when you look at the engineering of this monument, really look at it, it becomes hard to understand how such precision was achieved with the simple tools described in traditional history. Let us start with alignment. The Great Pyramid is not just roughly aligned to true north. Its orientation is so accurate that even modern engineers admire it. The deviation from true north is less than a fraction of a degree better than some modern buildings created with computer assistance. How did people using wooden sights, ropes, and copper instruments achieve that level of precision? Then there is the stonework itself. Over 2 million blocks, many weighing between 2 and 15 tons, and some granite pieces reaching up to 70 or 80 tons, were shaped, transported, and positioned with remarkable accuracy. Many joints are so tight you could not fit a piece of paper between them. In some interior sections, the blocks interlock in complex ways that distribute pressure and prevent collapse, an engineering feature far ahead of its time. Now look closer at the granite. Granite is an extremely hard stone. Copper tools, the primary tools historians say were used, are significantly softer than granite. Yet inside the pyramid, there are smooth surfaces, precise cuts, and even drill holes that appear mechanically consistent. Engineers like Christopher Dunn have examined these features and note that they resemble the results of advanced drilling or machining rather than simple hand carving. Even modern experiments attempting to replicate these cuts with copper chisels have been disappointing. Tools wear down quickly. Progress is painfully slow. The outcome does not resemble the precision seen in the pyramid's granite blocks. So, what do we make of this? Either the ancient builders had far more advanced techniques than we have given them credit for, or our understanding of how the pyramid was built is missing key elements. It does not require jumping to extraordinary conclusions. It simply requires admitting that the standard explanation does not fully match the physical evidence. The monument is not just big. It is intelligently engineered, mathematically precise, and constructed with a level of craftsmanship that feels oddly out of place for the tools we assume they had. And that disconnect encourages us to ask, were the builders using knowledge or methods that did not survive into later Egyptian history? If ancient workers truly built the Great Pyramid with simple copper chisels, stone hammers, wooden sledges, and rope, then modern teams using the same tools and methods should at least be able to reproduce some of the results even on a small scale. That would validate the traditional explanation and show that the ancient builders simply mastered techniques we have forgotten. But here's the surprising part. When engineers and archaeologists try to recreate those methods today, the results fall far short of what we see in the pyramid. Let us begin with stone cutting. Copper is one of the softest metals. When modern researchers use copper chisels to cut granite blocks, especially the kind used deep inside the king's chamber, the tools wear down almost immediately. In some experiments, chisels had to be reshaped or replaced every few minutes. Even after hours of hard effort, the progress was minimal. The resulting surfaces look rough, uneven, and nothing like the smooth, precise granite faces inside the pyramid. Then there is drilling. Some blocks in the pyramid show drill holes with consistent circular patterns, indicating rotation at a steady speed and pressure. When modern teams attempt to replicate this using copper tubes and abrasive sand, the method often suggested by mainstream theory, the drilling is painfully slow. The holes produced do not match the accuracy or the spiral tool marks seen in actual pyramid samples. Transportation trials show similar issues. Experimental archaeology groups have tried hauling multi-ton stones on sledges across desert terrain, as the textbooks propose. Even with dozens of people pulling in perfect coordination, the friction and weight make movement extremely difficult. And that is before considering how to lift those massive stones hundreds of feet into the air, align them perfectly, and do it 2 million times. These experiments are not failures. They are extremely valuable. They show us something important. The traditional explanation might not be wrong, but it is incomplete. Something is missing. Some technique, technology, or knowledge that allowed the original builders to work with far greater efficiency than we can replicate using the same tools. This does not imply anything extraordinary. It simply invites humility. Our ancestors may have possessed practical know-how that has been lost to time, forgotten as civilizations rose and fell. And if that is true, then our picture of ancient history might need a major update. Now, let us explore one of the most overlooked but fascinating details inside the Great Pyramid: the way its interior passages and chambers were illuminated during construction. This might seem like a small technical point, but once you really think about it, it becomes a major clue about how the builders worked. According to the traditional explanation, workers used simple torches, oil lamps, or fire-based lighting while carving the narrow shafts and interior rooms. That is what we would naturally assume, after all. What else could they have used thousands of years ago? But here's the puzzle. There is no soot anywhere. Walk through the interior. Look at the ceilings. Look at the tight corridors. Look at the higher chambers, accessible only through cramped passage. You won't see the dark stains, smoke residue, or burn patterns that fire-based lighting inevitably leaves behind. In temples and tombs across Egypt, soot deposits are common visible reminders of torches used by ancient workers, priests, and later visitors. But the Great Pyramid, it is almost spotless. Some scholars have tried to explain this by saying workers may have used reflective mirrors to bounce sunlight deep into the structure. But polished copper mirrors lose brightness quickly, distort light, and are extremely inefficient over distance. Others suggest special oils that supposedly burned cleanly, but no known ancient oil source burns without leaving deposits in small, enclosed spaces. In tight shafts where oxygen levels would drop rapidly, torches would not even burn well. Yet the builders clearly had enough light to cut stone with precision, align blocks perfectly, and navigate complex passageways. So what were they using? This mystery does not mean the builders had futuristic technology. It simply shows that our understanding of their methods is incomplete. Maybe they used a forgotten lighting technique. Maybe they had tools or chemical mixtures we have not rediscovered. Or maybe the interior structure was built differently from how we imagine, making artificial lighting less necessary. The absence of soot is not dramatic on its own, but combined with everything else, the precision, the scale, the engineering choices, it becomes part of a larger pattern. A pattern suggesting that the builders had methods and knowledge we still have not fully understood. And it is that growing pattern that pushes us to keep asking questions. At this point in the journey, the questions surrounding the Great Pyramid begin to grow too large to ignore. And that is where a number of independent researchers, engineers, astronomers, geologists, and historians step into the conversation with fresh perspectives. They are not claiming anything sensational. They are simply pointing out details that do not fit neatly within the traditional timeline. And their work has opened entirely new avenues of thought about the pyramid's origins. Take Christopher Dunn, for example. As an engineer, he was not satisfied with general explanations about copper chisels carving granite. Instead, he examined the physical evidence, the drill holes, the tool marks, the symmetry. His conclusion was simple, not definitive, but thoughtful. The precision inside the pyramid looks more like the work of mechanical methods than hand tools. He suggested the builders had techniques or craftsmanship beyond what we currently understand. Then there is Robert Bovell, who noticed something extraordinary about the layout of the three main pyramids at Giza. They do not just form a random pattern. They match the arrangement of the three stars in Orion's belt. Even more interesting, the alignment matches how the stars appeared, not in Khufu's time, but around 10,500 BCE, thousands of years earlier. If intentional, that suggests the builders had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, and perhaps even a connection to a much earlier tradition. And of course, geologist Robert Schoch and researcher John Anthony West studied the Great Sphinx. They observed erosion patterns on its body and surrounding enclosure that looked like the result of heavy rainfall, not desert winds. But the Giza Plateau has not seen that kind of rainfall for roughly 12,000 years. If their analysis is correct, the Sphinx might be far older than the pyramids, and possibly the surviving work of a forgotten civilization predating dynastic Egypt. None of these researchers claim to have the final answer. What they do offer is a reminder: history is complex. Civilizations rise and fall. Knowledge is gained, lost, rediscovered, and sometimes misunderstood. When we zoom out, these alternative theories do not feel wild at all. They simply acknowledge that there may be chapters of human history we have not fully pieced together. And that openness, that willingness to follow the evidence wherever it leads, is exactly what keeps this mystery alive. Moving from the pyramids to their silent companion, the Great Sphinx, we find one of the most compelling clues that ancient Egypt might not have been the first advanced culture in this region. The Sphinx is iconic, half lion, half human, carved directly from the bedrock of the Giza Plateau. But what truly fascinates researchers is not its face or its shape. It is the erosion carved into its body. When geologist Robert Schoch and researcher John Anthony West examined the Sphinx enclosure, they noticed something unusual. The weathering patterns did not match what you would expect in a desert environment. Instead of sharp, wind-carved lines, the stone showed rounded edges and deep, vertical channels, patterns consistent with heavy, sustained rainfall. And here's the important part. Heavy rainfall has not occurred on the Giza Plateau for thousands and thousands of years. Most climatologists agree the last time Egypt experienced that level of precipitation was near the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. If that analysis is correct, then the Sphinx, at least its original form, may date back to a period long before the rise of the ancient Egyptian civilization we learn about in school. Some researchers even propose that the Egyptians did not build the Sphinx at all. Instead, they may have discovered it, restored it, reshaped the face, and incorporated it into their cultural and spiritual landscape. This idea does not diminish ancient Egypt. It enriches it. Imagine inheriting a colossal monument from a culture that vanished thousands of years earlier. Imagine trying to preserve it, reinterpret it, and make it your own. That is a testament to admiration, not imitation. If the Sphinx truly predates Egypt's dynastic period, it raises an even bigger question. Who created it originally? Was it a civilization we have not properly identified? a culture with engineering skills and artistic vision equal to, or possibly greater than, the later Egyptians. We do not yet have those answers, but the erosion patterns suggest the Sphinx has a story that stretches deeper into time than we once believed. And if one structure at Giza is older than expected, could others, maybe even the Great Pyramid itself, also connect to a timeline far earlier than the textbooks propose? The Sphinx may not speak, but its weathered surface might be telling us something profound. Our understanding of ancient history may only scratch the surface. As if the mysteries of the pyramid's construction were not compelling enough, the interior of the Great Pyramid adds an entirely new layer of intrigue. For decades, archaeologists believed they understood the basic layout. A few chambers, some passageways, and shaft-like tunnels whose purpose remained unclear. But modern technology has revealed that the structure is far more complex and perhaps far more secretive than anyone expected. In the early 1992s, German engineer Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robotic crawler deep into one of the narrow shafts connected to the Queen's chamber. These shafts were long thought to be symbolic or decorative, not functional. What the robot found stunned the archaeological world. A perfectly fitted limestone block sealing the end of the shaft, complete with two small copper handles. This was later dubbed Gantenbrink's door. The presence of handles suggests intentional access, someone meant to open or close this barrier. But when it was discovered, Egyptian authorities halted further exploration. Nearly a decade passed before another team drilled a small hole through the block in 2002. Behind it, another stone door, another deliberate seal. And beyond that second door, we still do not know. Requests for further investigation have consistently been delayed or denied. Then came 2017, when an international team used muon radiography, essentially a cosmic ray scanning technique, to peer inside the pyramid without physically altering it. The results revealed a massive hidden void above the Grand Gallery. This cavity is large enough to rival the biggest known rooms inside the pyramid, yet it has no visible entrance and no known purpose. Why would a monument built 4,500 years ago contain such a large, sealed-off space? And why has not more effort been made to explore it? From a preservation standpoint, caution makes sense. But the pattern stopping exploration at crucial moments leaves many wondering whether the full story is being intentionally slowed or quietly redirected. Hidden doors, blocked shafts, a massive, unexplored chamber, all within one of the most studied monuments on Earth. These features do not prove anything dramatic on their own, but collectively, they suggest that the Great Pyramid still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered, and the fact that we are prevented from examining them only deepens the mystery. Any conversation about the Great Pyramid's mysteries eventually leads to one figure at the center of modern Egyptian archaeology, Dr. Arvin Sai Awas. For decades, he has been the public face of Egypt's ancient heritage, charismatic, authoritative, and deeply protective of the country's archaeological sites. To some, he is a champion of Egyptian pride. To others, he is the ultimate gatekeeper, controlling which discoveries are allowed to be explored and which theories are dismissed before they even have a chance. Hawass has held some of the most influential positions in Egyptian antiquities management, including Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities and later the Minister of Antiquities. These roles gave him enormous authority over excavation permits, research access, media coverage, and the work of foreign archaeological teams. Essentially, nothing major happens on or under Egypt's ancient sands without his approval. Supporters argue that this level of control is necessary. Egypt's monuments are fragile, rare, and constantly threatened by environmental damage, tourism pressures, and sensationalized claims. Maintaining strict oversight, they say, protects historical integrity. But critics see another side. They point out that independent researchers who question the mainstream narrative often face barriers, denied permits, abrupt shutdowns of promising projects, or public dismissal without discussion. In the case of Gantenbrink's door or the muon-detected chamber, critics argue that delays or hesitations from authorities, often under Hawass's leadership, prevented timely investigation that could have revealed groundbreaking information. This tension has created a polarized landscape. On one side, a powerful establishment defending its narrative. On the other, a growing number of researchers, scientists, and engineers pushing for open access, transparency, and fresh interpretation. It is important to be fair here. Hawass is not a villain, and he is not hiding secrets in a dramatic way. But he does represent a particular attitude found in many academic institutions, the belief that the established timeline must be protected from ideas that appear disruptive, even if they are supported by interesting evidence. The question is not whether Hawass is right or wrong. It is whether gatekeeping, however well-intentioned, might be slowing our understanding of one of humanity's most important monuments. After all, if a discovery could rewrite history, would not we want to know? As we continue piecing together the clues surrounding the Great Pyramid, a bigger and bolder idea begins to take shape, one that challenges not just the traditional story of Khufu, but the entire timeline of early human civilization. This idea suggests that ancient Egypt may not have been the origin of the knowledge used to build the pyramid, but rather the inheritors of a much older tradition. This perspective is explored by researchers like Graham Hancock, John Anthony West, and others who note a striking pattern. Early Egyptian civilization appears to emerge suddenly, already equipped with advanced architecture, mathematics, astronomy, and symbolic systems. Instead of a slow, gradual build-up over thousands of years, Egyptian culture seems to rise rapidly and fully formed. One explanation is that Egypt inherited fragments of knowledge from an earlier, forgotten civilization, perhaps one that existed near the end of the last ice age. Supporting this idea are archaeological sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, which dates back roughly 11,600 years, and features enormous stone pillars arranged with precision. Its existence proves that complex architecture did not begin with Egypt or Mesopotamia. It existed far earlier than textbooks once claimed. If a sophisticated culture existed at that time, it is possible that some of its knowledge survived long enough to influence later civilizations. Egypt, with its stability along the Nile and its central location, could have been a natural place for those ideas to take root, evolve, and flourish. Researchers also point to similarities between ancient sites worldwide, shared architectural tropes, megalithic construction methods, astronomical alignments, and symbolic patterns. These parallels do not prove a global civilization, but they do hint at either cultural connection or a shared inheritance from an earlier source. This theory does not deny Egypt's genius. It does not diminish its achievements. In fact, it highlights the Egyptians' ability to preserve, refine, and elevate older knowledge, into something extraordinary. Civilizations often build on the wisdom of those before them, just as we build on the scientific discoveries of previous centuries. The possibility of an earlier civilization does not rewrite Egypt's glory. It expands it. And if this older culture once existed sophisticated, skilled, and capable of monumental construction, then the Great Pyramid might not be the beginning of human architectural brilliance, but a breathtaking continuation of a much older legacy. By now, we have looked at the missing inscriptions, the engineering mysteries, the advanced craftsmanship, the puzzling erosion patterns, and even the possibility of older civilizations. All of these clues encourage deeper investigation. Yet when researchers attempt to explore these ideas, they often encounter resistance not just from individuals, but from established academic systems. Mainstream archaeology has built its reputation on a specific narrative that Egyptian civilization began around 3100 BCE and steadily developed until it produced architectural masterpieces like the Great Pyramid. This timeline is taught in schools, displayed in museums, and woven into cultural identity. Updating it would require rethinking countless assumptions, revising textbooks, and reconsidering long-held interpretations. That is not easy. It is uncomfortable. And institutions, like people, tend to protect what they have invested in. This is where resistance appears. When new data challenges the accepted story, like the hidden void detected in 2017, or the uncertain dating of the Sphinx, or evidence of advanced stoneworking, those findings are often minimized, postponed, or labeled speculative. Exploration of sealed doors is delayed. Independent researchers struggle to obtain permits. Fresh perspectives are sometimes dismissed before they are even fully considered. But resistance does not mean wrongdoing. Often, it is simply inertia. Large institutions move slowly. They rely on consensus, not curiosity. And while consensus is valuable, it can accidentally suppress innovation. The real issue is not whether mainstream scholars are right or wrong. It is whether the field is open enough to let evidence guide the conversation. If the Great Pyramid truly is just a masterful royal tomb built with Bronze Age tools, then open investigation will confirm that. But if its origins are more complex, if sealed chambers hold new insights, if erosion patterns point to a deeper past, if its precision hints at lost techniques, then we only discover that through transparent, courageous exploration. Human history is a puzzle, and the Great Pyramid is one of its most important pieces. To understand it fully, we need open minds, collaborative research, and curiosity unbound by old boundaries. The story of the pyramid is not finished. In many ways, it is just beginning, and the next chapter depends on our willingness to ask questions and follow the evidence wherever it leads. When we step back and look at all 12 points together, a bigger picture starts to emerge. The Great Pyramid is not just a monument of stone, it is a monument of mystery. A structure that challenges our assumptions, stretches our understanding of ancient engineering, and invites us to rethink how human knowledge grows, fades, and sometimes reappears in ways we never expected. Whether it was built solely by the Egyptians of Khufu's time, or partly influenced by older traditions, or even connected to a civilization long forgotten, one thing is certain. The Great Pyramid is far more than a simple royal tomb. Its precision, its unexplored chambers, its unusual erosion patterns, and its unmatched sophistication show us that history still holds secrets waiting to be uncovered. And maybe that is the most inspiring part. Humanity's story is not finished. It is full of gaps, surprises, and turning points that remind us how remarkable our ancestors truly were. Every new discovery, whether geological, archaeological, or technological, does not just teach us about the past. It also teaches us about ourselves, our curiosity, our creativity, and our endless capacity to wonder. So as we close today's journey, I hope this exploration did not give you answers. I hope it gave you better questions. Thank you so much for spending your time here. If you enjoy uncovering hidden stories, challenging old narratives, and exploring the mysteries that make our world so fascinating, remember to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more calm, deep dives just like this. Until next time, take care, stay curious, and keep your sense of wonder alive.